Madison cornered me at the rehearsal and said, "Honestly, you don't fit the vibe we're going for tomorrow. Don't come." I felt 150 eyes on me as I walked toward the exit. But instead of my car, I called the caterer. "Cancel everything, now." "My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm 32, and I run a successful accounting firm in Portland." I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had something they didn't expect: complete financial control over their dream wedding. Growing up, my younger brother Daniel was the favorite child while I was the reliable one who cleaned up his messes. When he got engaged to Madison 6 months ago, I offered to pay for their wedding as my gift. Venue, catering, flowers, photography, everything. For half a year, I covered deposits, negotiated with vendors, and handled logistics while they planned their perfect day. My parents always said I was the steady one, never needing attention, while Daniel needed more support. I thought funding his wedding would finally make me part of the inner circle instead of the background helper I'd always been. Madison never liked me, though. She saw me as an obstacle to her vision of perfection, too practical for her aesthetic. But when she told me I didn't belong at the wedding I had paid for, something inside me snapped. I realized I'd been funding my own exclusion, bankrolling people who would rather erase me than include me. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I read them all. The betrayal happened during the wedding rehearsal at the venue I had personally booked and paid for. I arrived early that Friday evening to check final details with vendors, carrying my thick wedding planning folder and wearing a simple blue dress. The Riverside Gardens was beautiful, exactly what I'd envisioned when I toured 12 venues to find the perfect one. String lights twinkled between oak trees, and the altar backdrop looked magical against the sunset. Madison appeared in her rehearsal outfit, designer from head to toe, flanked by her 5 bridesmaids. All blonde, all tall, all looking like they stepped out of a magazine. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp and cutting. I blinked, confused. "I'm here for the rehearsal. I wanted to make sure everything was set for tomorrow." "You're not in the wedding party," she said coldly. "And honestly, you don't really fit the vibe we're going for." Her bridesmaids giggled behind her, exchanging glances like I was a joke they were all in on. My cheeks burned. "I'm Daniel's sister," I said quietly. "I assumed I'd walk down the aisle as family." Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "I think it's better if you just skip tomorrow. This day is about us, not about making everyone comfortable." I looked around desperately for Daniel, hoping he'd defend me. But he was across the courtyard, deep in conversation with his groomsmen, avoiding eye contact completely. Madison's smile turned cruel. "You don't belong here. Leave." The words hit me like a physical blow. I was being disinvited from a wedding I had funded. Every flower arrangement, every chair, every string of lights had been paid for with my money. I walked outside in shock, standing in the parking lot of the venue I had toured, chosen, and negotiated the price for. My hands shook as I gripped my car keys. Everything inside was mine. The flowers I'd selected after 3 different tastings, the catering menu I'd approved, the band I'd hired after listening to dozens of demos. But according to Madison, I didn't belong there. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Mads told me what happened. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That's when I realized this wasn't Madison being difficult. This was a coordinated effort to erase me from their special day while keeping my money. Standing in that parking lot, I felt something shift from hurt to clarity. They wanted me. Gone? Fine. But they couldn't have my money too. The next morning, I called the venue to confirm final details and learned something that made my blood boil. Madison had already contacted them earlier that week. She tried to change the primary contact information, the wedding coordinator explained. "She wanted to remove your name from all vendor communications." "Did she say why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "She mentioned there was some family drama and that she needed to protect the event from interference." Madison had positioned herself as the reasonable bride dealing with a difficult future sister-in-law. She'd been planning to cut me out while keeping my money all along. I hung up and immediately drove to my parents' house, hoping for support. Surely they'd see how wrong this was. Instead, my mother barely looked up from her coffee when I explained what happened. "Madison's under a lot of stress," she said with a dismissive wave. "Can't you just be the bigger person?" My father nodded from behind his newspaper. "You've always been independent, Rebecca. Daniel needs this more than you need to be there." They suggested I skip the wedding to keep the peace and let Daniel have his special day. My own parents were choosing Madison's comfort over my dignity. "I paid for everything," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "And that was very generous," Mom replied. "But making a scene won't change anything." They made me feel like I was being unreasonable for expecting to attend my brother's wedding. Like I was the problem for not accepting my exclusion gracefully. Has your family ever made you feel invisible while taking everything you offer? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. Later that afternoon, Madison called me directly. Her voice was sickeningly sweet, like honey laced with poison. "Rebecca, I know yesterday was awkward, but I hope you understand this is just how it has to be." I stayed silent, letting her dig her own grave. "Daniel and I are so grateful for everything you've done financially. You're such a generous sister." She was acknowledging my payments while confirming my exclusion, taking my money and my dignity in the same breath. "We'll make sure to take lots of pictures so you can see how beautiful everything turned out," she continued. "Maybe we can have dinner next week and I'll show you all the photos." The audacity was breathtaking. She wanted me to pay for their wedding, then wait for photos like a distant relative who couldn't afford to attend. "You know what, Madison?" I said finally. "You're absolutely right." "Oh, good. I knew you'd understand." "I understand perfectly. You don't want me there, and I don't want to be somewhere I'm not wanted." She paused, probably sensing something in my tone. "I'm glad we're on the same page," she said carefully. "We definitely are." That's when I realized they saw me as a bank account, not a person. They were comfortable taking my money while treating me as disposable. After I hung up, I sat in my home office staring at the wall of contracts and vendor agreements. That's when the full picture became clear. What they didn't know was that every single vendor contract was in my name alone. I had insisted on this arrangement to streamline payments and avoid confusion about who was responsible for what. Madison's name appeared nowhere on the legal documents. She was listed only as the event contact for day of coordination. What they didn't know was that I had built-in cancellation clauses for each vendor due to my business background. My accounting firm had taught me to always protect myself in financial agreements. Every contract included provisions for cancellation with 24 to 48 hours notice. The venue, caterer, florist, photographer, and band all had clauses allowing me to withdraw with minimal penalties. What they didn't know was that I had been documenting Madison's hostile behavior for weeks. I had saved text messages, recorded conversations, and kept detailed notes of her attempts to exclude me. My business instincts had kicked in when I first sensed trouble. I always keep records. The wedding insurance policy was also in my name, protecting me from financial loss. Most importantly, Daniel had never been added as a co-signer on any of the contracts. They had assumed my generosity meant giving up control, but I had maintained legal authority over everything. Every flower petal, every dinner plate, every note of music belonged to me. My ally was my business partner and best friend Jake, who had watched this drama unfold for months. When I called him that night, his response was immediate. "They're using you," he said bluntly. "You're not their sister, you're their ATM." Jake came over within an hour, bringing takeout and his laptop. We spread all the contracts across my dining room table, reviewing every clause and cancellation policy. "You have complete legal authority to cancel everything," he confirmed after reading through the documents. "These contracts are bulletproof." "But should I?" I asked, still hesitating. "It's Daniel's wedding." Jake looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "They can't have their cake and eat it too. If you're not family enough to attend, you're not family enough to pay." Meanwhile, my phone buzzed constantly. Daniel called repeatedly, but I let it go to voicemail. His messages grew increasingly desperate. "Rebecca, please call me. We need to talk about tomorrow. I know you're upset, but we can work this out. Please don't do anything crazy." Madison left voicemails too, her tone shifting from condescending to panicked. "There seems to be some confusion about the wedding arrangements. Please call me immediately." "Rebecca, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We really need to talk." My parents also tried to intervene, but I blocked their calls temporarily. I couldn't handle more guilt trips about being the bigger person. Jake encouraged me to hold firm. "For once in your life, don't be the one who fixes everyone else's mess." By Friday evening, the vendors started calling. Apparently, Madison was frantically trying to take control of arrangements that weren't legally hers. "The bride says she's in charge now," the florist said, confused. "But all our contracts are with you." The caterer called next. "Should we be taking directions from Madison or from you? We're getting conflicting information." I stayed professional but firm. "All decisions go through me. I'm the contract holder." The chaos was building, and I could feel their panic through the phone calls. They were scrambling to figure out what had happened. The final breaking point came when Daniel showed up at my office the night before the wedding. His usually perfect hair was messy, and his eyes were red with stress. "You're really going to destroy my wedding over this?" he asked, finally showing some emotion. "I'm not destroying anything," I replied calmly. "I'm just choosing not to fund my own exclusion." "That's not what happened." I pulled out my phone and showed him Madison's texts from earlier. "Your fiancé told me I don't belong at your wedding." In writing, Daniel's face crumbled as he read her words. For the first time, he seemed to understand what had really happened. But it was too late. The confrontation happened Saturday morning when my entire family showed up at my apartment. Daniel, Madison, and my parents stood in my hallway like an intervention team, demanding I fix this immediately. "The vendors are refusing to work," Madison screamed, her perfect makeup already smudged from crying. "They say everything is canceled." "That's correct," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "I canceled all contracts at 6 a.m. this morning." My father erupted. "You're being petty and vindictive. This is Daniel's wedding day." "It was Daniel's wedding day," I corrected. "Now, it's just Saturday." Madison broke down completely. "You can't do this. We have 150 guests coming." "You told me I don't belong there," I said, my voice steady as steel. "So I'm not paying to not belong there." Daniel finally found his voice. "Rebecca, I never said you couldn't come. You never said I could, either. When your fiancé told me to leave, you said nothing." I pulled out my phone and showed them the text trail. "You literally told me not to make it harder than it needs to be." "That's not what I meant," Daniel protested. But the evidence was clear. Madison tried a different approach, her voice desperate. "We can fix this. You can come to the wedding." "Now I can come?" I laughed. "After you made it clear I don't fit your vibe?" My mother pleaded with tears in her eyes. "Think about all the guests, all the planning. People are flying in from across the country. You should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't family enough to attend." "But you're Daniel's sister," my father argued desperately. "Exactly. I'm his sister, and you all forgot that when it mattered." Madison collapsed into my armchair. "We'll have nothing. No venue, no food, no flowers, nothing." "You'll have exactly what you wanted," I said. "A wedding without me." Daniel stared at me in shock. "I can't believe you'd do this to us." "I didn't do anything to you. I stopped doing everything for you." "There's a difference." The room fell silent except for Madison sobbing. They finally understood that their actions had consequences. Daniel and Madison had to make humiliating phone calls to cancel the wedding and notify 150 guests. They rescheduled for 3 months later and paid for a much smaller ceremony at a local restaurant with their own money. My parents tried to discreet of Tippleton, maintain neutrality, but eventually apologized for choosing sides against me. It took them weeks to realize they'd prioritized keeping peace over protecting their daughter. Madison never apologized, but she never excluded me from family events again. She learned that treating me badly had real consequences. Daniel learned to speak up for himself instead of letting others fight his battles. Our relationship took time to heal, but it's stronger now because it's built on mutual respect. I used the money I saved to take a 2-week vacation to Italy, solo and peaceful. The vendor cancellations were handled smoothly, and I got most of my deposits back thanks to those cancellation clauses. When Daniel finally got married 3 months later, it was a simple ceremony where I was treated as an honored guest. The celebration was smaller but more genuine. I realized that love without respect is just manipulation, and family boundaries matter more than keeping the peace. For once, I didn't fix everyone else's problems. I fixed my own. If you've ever been the family member who pays for everything but gets treated like nothing, this story is for you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop doing things for people who don't value you. Your voice matters. Where are you watching from? Drop it below. Subscribe for more true stories of betrayal, justice, and strength. Because setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary.